Jesus. I'm resident of Collinwood for YouTube. Joel Sains. That's my buddy Alan Gallant. That's my buddy Patrick McCray. We're here to review the movie Blazing Saddles.
I'll just say this. Our pre-discussion, which went on far too long, because it takes me forever to light coals and stuff. They're very patient. It went everywhere from dealing with prostate infections to Hattie McDaniel. We have thoroughly primed ourselves.
We have covered all bases
for the discussion. Joel, you were saying.
Yeah. You guys talked about the TV. You guys were talking about the TV series Black Bart to me before we did this movie review, and before I watched it, because I have seen Blazing Saddles a number of times.
Sure.
So what I did was I watched 4 episodes of Black Bart, and I do think.
Oh God.
Do I think they stayed true to what the movie was? No, not necessarily, because I think they stayed enough to it to recognize that it's going off of Blazing Saddles, but there are some weird things that happen in the series that are just wonky. But again, it's a comedy series too. So
the humor is way too spicy in the film, I think, to translate to 1975 television too. Yeah. So you have to kind of work around that.
So there's another angle to this though. And it's a story I've heard, and I'm having trouble getting it corroborated. But I had it corroborated at one point. There was a source that I remember. But yeah, okay, so Blazing Saddles TV series, the pilot was aired. It was unsuccessful. It wasn't picked up. That's the story. This is what I've heard is the truth. No, the pilot didn't get picked up, or the series didn't get picked up, but they filmed several seasons of it.
Yeah.
Several seasons.
Like 16 to 20 episode seasons
per season over the years. And that the cast would come back every year. And they would spend, 3 or 4 months, maybe not that long, but, at least 2 or 3 months shooting in rapid succession.
On backlot sets.
On backlot sets, this series. And if you look at the pilot to Black Bart, it's almost like something an AI would have written. It's symbolic of a comedy. It's symbolic of a sitcom, but it doesn't go beyond that. And so you start to wonder why. Well, the reason I've heard is that Mel's contract with Warner Brothers stated that for him to retain the rights to Blazing Saddles, to do something else to the property, he had to put something into production. And I think it could have been a comic book. It could have been all sorts of things, but
he chose the series,
But put something into production within a certain time frame. And so he put the series into production. He had to keep it in production for a while, I think, so that he would retain the rights.
Satisfying contractual, whatever. Yeah.
So just to lawyers and a judge, it had to basically appear to be a sitcom. Mm-hmm. But it just had to be one in the broadest, loosest sense.
Right.
So they could point to it in court and say, yes, this is it. But the plots are almost incomprehensible. And what it lacked, because the actors are fine. The actors doing a decent job. None of them are like rolling their eyes on camera because that would have pissed off the judge. That would have invalidated it.
Of course. And they're getting paid. I mean, they're getting paid.
Everybody's getting paid. But what it lacked, and what I would have loved, and what I would have loved to have been, is the writer-producer put in charge of this. It was basically saying, I'm in a very risk-averse business. And they're not letting me do anything. And I've been handed this. And although no one's going to see it, I'm going to see it. Maybe someone at the studio is going to see it. And it ends up being one of the most innovative, like get a life level TV series ever.
Yeah.
Because nobody cares. It's like, well, if no one cares, I can do a time travel arc.
Sure.
If no one cares, I can bring a vampire into Rockbridge. But that's why the series is so weird. And there are multiple episodes, I believe, of Black Bart. If you start, Butch White, or I'm sorry, Joel watched 4 of them.
Yeah, the pilot came up right away. I mean, the pilot comes up right away when you.
But it's one of the weirdest stories in Hollywood I know of a series that existed to never be seen. It's almost like, it's like the Corman Fantastic Four.
Oh yeah,
which was made just to retain rights.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
It's not the only thing too, because I remember when Dimension was making Hellraiser Judgment, and the only reason they were making Hellraiser Judgment, you could tell how cheaply that movie was put together if you ever go watch it.
The Hellraiser movies have the most lavish budgets and production values I've ever seen.
Well, this had an okay budget, but it was cheaply done, and you could tell it was. The director himself is actually in this movie as a character.
Yeah.
He does a good job.
Just like Citizen Kane.
Because the story for Hellraiser Judgment is they're addressing, nobody plays with a puzzle box anymore because they addressed the time period.
Sure.
They said it in modern day.
Everybody knows what the puzzle box is by the time you get to the 3rd movie. So.
Right, and who the hell plays with a puzzle box these days?
Right.
Nobody. Like everybody's on video games and stuff like that, and that's what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So they change they do certain shit to get people to play the puzzle box or play it as something else, and it's just like, this movie's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's. I mean, is it the worst Hellraiser I've ever seen? No, but it's fucking.
Well, that's a bar so low. You need the entire deep earth moving arm of Caterpillar to find it. By saying the worst Hellraiser thing ever.
Yes. Yeah, get your magnifying glass out and look deeply.
I mean,
I think the worst Hellraiser movie isn't even a Hellraiser movie. It's Wishmaster.
The thing about Hellraiser is it's such an interesting idea that I don't think has ever really, other than the story of the Hellbound Heart, has ever really been thoroughly executed with enough elan and imagination worthy of the idea.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that bar keeps escaping the hand of people when they reach for it.
I think it's the way the screenplays are put together. That's even the initial Hellraiser seems to focus on threat rather than backstory or this or that. Now I know Hellraiser gets a backstory eventually, or some of the characters do, but you'd like to see a little bit more of that in the first movie to really kind of solidify it.
I think when you're dealing with and of course this is incredibly pertinent to Blazing Saddles.
Yes.
But when you're dealing with a realm so all powerful, not a lot of conflict there. Yeah. Now, if somehow the chief Cenobites get separated from that realm and can only draw on certain parts of it or something like that, right. Or a human gets trapped there but has certain abilities that make the Cenobites unable to do what they normally do.
Right.
Okay, we begin to have something that we can produce and put together and have something interesting going on with it.
Yeah, I agree. There has to be limitations. I guess you'd have them cross universe limitations.
Something like that.
They come to the real world. Certain things they're all powerful. Other things, it's discovered that it blocks their power or whatever.
To bring this full circle, Hedley Lamar gets the power of the Cenobites. Yeah, he gets the puzzle box.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I would watch that.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. Cleavon Little plays Sheriff Black Bart in this. What did you guys? I always found him a very talented actor. What did you guys think?
Great.
Incredible. He won a Tony for Pearly in 1970.
He's criminally underused.
Was a great actor, and he ended up, he ended up making a decent living at it. He was in several films, and he had another series called Temperatures Rising.
Yeah.
So
I've often wondered,
you're right. He was underappreciated, is what he was.
Considering his charm, his physical nimbleness, and everything else, he would have made a hell of a Han Solo.
Sure, absolutely. or Calrissian or any one of a number of action characters from that universe. Absolutely.
Yeah. Gene Wilder is here as the Waco Kid. Funny story. I guess John Wayne was offered the role as Waco Kid,
Who
but
was
no, he
offered?
didn't.
Wait, John. Well, sort of.
Yeah,
John Wayne was not the actor who was mentioned. Mel Brooks saw John Wayne on the lot
yeah,
and gave him the script and talked him into reading it. Just said, "I'd love you." And Waco Kid is the obvious part.
Yeah.
yeah,
And Wayne read it, and he was horrified that there were terms like "blow it out your ass" and things like that, and they were
Yeah.
in a western. And he said, "This would really damage my career, but I promise you, I will buy the first ticket for it."
yeah,
So,
Wanted to
because
say,
Wayne's a funny
right.
guy, he was a
Yeah.
very funny guy, and I think it was one of those. If this had been made after Airplane, if it had been
yeah,
made 10 years later, forget it. And Wayne had not been, dead.
Right.
Yes, I
Yeah,
think
because
Wayne would have
in
been.
real life, Wayne was a salty guy. He was
Oh
very
yeah,
protective of his image,
yeah,
and
and he had just won the Oscar.
yeah.
So I
yeah,
think that was a double thing. Well, like they kept offering parts in their movies to Heston,
yeah.
and Heston just said, "Boys, it's not my sense of humor. I just don't get it. What are you doing?"
No. Yeah, that's now. Yeah, Heston, I don't think was a salty guy in real life, so he wouldn't have appreciated that kind of humor at all. Um, he was kind of a ramrod, actually, from
He
what I.
was he was what he appears to be. It was the real
Yeah,
article.
yeah.
Headley Lamar is in this movie. Um, just to cast this movie, my favorite scene in this movie is the cameo appearance by Don DeLuise, who was directed a musical, and they all come through, and the one guy's like,
Just he marries.
I work for I work for Mel Brooks, and Don DeLuise is like, not the face, not the face, and they punch him and stuff.
They punch him in the stomach instead. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's great. There's a lot of great humor in this, and I think even the so-called politically incorrect humor has survived because of the wit of the script that's written. I mean, people won't talk about it as much, but they will watch it and accept it much more than they would some other period
Well,
pieces. That
it's
have
an
the same kind
equal opportunity
of
offender,
stuff. It is.
and yet it isn't, because the one group that Mel puts aside to treat unfairly, and by unfairly I mean fairly, are rednecks,
Mm-hmm.
and he has no mercy.
None at all.
They are dumb. They're
yeah,
portrayed, first of all, as just dumb, dim-witted
Mm-hmm.
characters. They are dumb. They are mean-spirited. They're everything you would want and
Right.
imagine.
Right.
Everyone else is either, there are no assaults on character. There are assaults on cliched behavior. You're
There
Brit,
are
you're Brit, you're
assaults
Brit, you're Brit, you're
on
Brit.
bigotry and that
But the
sort of
real assaults
huge.
are for the bad guys, and the
Yeah.
bad guys are, I mean, he completely associates American rednecks and Nazis.
Yes.
He has no
Actually sit
compunction
down
about that.
together at one point, literally sitting down together at one point. So
He
yeah.
has no compunction about that, and that I love. It's like when everyone else is so. Because I've often said, the issue that America had with Barack Obama, not America, but a certain segment of America had, was that he's black. I said, all this Tea Party stuff, all this MAGA stuff, all of it. If you just really want to boil it down, elect a black man in America and watch the rednecks go crazy,
Yeah.
and they
And
did.
when we say rednecks, we're not talking about the average rural American. We're talking
No.
red.
And redneck is a state of mind.
Yes.
It exists at any economic level. It exists at any educational level, and and more importantly, redneck is a choice.
Yes.
Redneck is a choice. Yeah, after a certain point, you choose to be a redneck. You don't choose to be rural. You don't choose the educational opportunities that you're born into, and things like that. That we're not talking about at all.
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, and I think too one of the things that frames it better is the fact that it's all of the racial epithets are tongue in cheek. And again, the smartest person on screen is the black man. He's the smartest, cleverest person, the guy who knows how to survive in a world that's hostile to him.
That's right.
And how to make fools out of these guys.
Yes. And the epithets that are hurled by one of two groups. Either the group themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of, kind of take back the night kind of sense, or assholes.
Right.
But allies and so on do not use those terms.
No.
And so that's I don't think the Waco Kid uses them at all.
No.
He calls the people of the land, he says, morons.
Morons.
But that's a universal term.
Yes.
I love that. God, that line is so good. And there's something so genuine about the way Cleon Little breaks up when he says it. That's just a wonderful, wonderful moment of performance and yet truth I've seen on screen.
I want to know what Cleon Little whispered in his ear when he genuinely cracks up at the end of one scene. He's going to tell him the plan, and he whispers something in his ear, and he genuinely is cracking up.
Yeah, you
can tell he is. It's like something fun was going on there.
I don't think I've ever seen a movie with an ending as I'm going to sound weird when I say it, as spiritually satisfying.
It's a wonderful ending. It's great.
I'm talking about down to the last frames.
Yeah, absolutely. But the whole thing is, it warps reality. I mean, it's just like, let's put Hollywood and all of this together. Let's make sure that we're sort of aware of the confusion of society and social mores and everything else, and the flaws and the exhilaration of it, and so you throw all of this stuff together, and you make comments.
You know what it picks up from is Sherlock Jr.
Mm-hmm.
It's Sherlock Jr. It's where the guy falls asleep, his projectionist, and he walks into film after film after film.
Mm-hmm.
That, to me, this is a thread that goes right to that.
Mm-hmm. And they end up going in and watching themselves in the movie at the end.
And you're back in the climax.
Yeah,
it's totally that simple.
It's meta, in that respect.
Oh yeah.
It's a lot of fun, and Brooks is an incredible comedy writer. He just is. He's amazing.
There was a moment, and I don't remember who said it, but he had a meeting at Brooks Films, and he met with Mel Brooks, and that the very first thing Mel said to him, and he was joking and he was being quote unquote Mel, and he was completely serious at the same time, was, okay, there's just one thing you need to know about me. Well, two things. I'm a genius and I'm always right. And you know what?
He pretty much.
He's a genius. He's pretty much always right.
Right.
Yeah. Mel Brooks was, I'll say the word, ahead of his time for sure.
He and Carl Reiner were just like from the beginnings of television all the way through and into films, later. But
Jewel,
they were part of the glue that held comedy together for decades.
Yeah.
By the way, Jewel, I know you were in charge of these things. This all ties together to something else that happened today. Brooks Films was his production company that did all sorts of stuff. You know what I think their first feature was? I think.
What's that?
It was The Elephant Man. And David Lynch died today.
That's right. He passed away today. Right.
And David Lynch was the guy who looked at or Mel Brooks was the guy who looked at David Lynch and said,
"Yeah,
I want you."
And the story goes that he also defended him against the suits when they wanted him to cut weird dream sequence stuff out, which is of course makes the film.
Yeah,
and he said Look. We're just allowing you to see this to see what we're doing. We're not asking for your opinion on it. You know, you're not artists. Leave us alone. And at that point, Mel Brooks had the stones and the
taste
to do it. But I mean, he could do it. He could tell them no. At that point. Yeah. It's a loss. What was he 78? I guess he had emphysema. He'd been a lifelong smoker.
Yeah, I mean, the TM didn't address that.
Yeah.
David Lynch was a very genius, smart film director. I mean, he did Dune, he did Eraserhead.
We did Eraserhead here, so that was one of the first ones that I did with you guys. Was Eraserhead.
Shout out to Barry McClain and Car Tillers. It's a good movie. I mean, he was really smart. So we'll hold a moment of silence at the end of this for him, for David Lynch. But for this movie here, Mel Brooks, I mean, here's a guy who's really smart too. And they break the fourth wall with this, but they don't hurt the movie at all doing it.
No, it's part of what would be an old school comedic extravaganza in the music hall tradition or the burlesque tradition, where you're doing the skit and then all of a sudden you break and you say an aside to the audience. And Moliere used that sort of thing, centuries ago. But
well, Shakespeare has it in Much Ado About Nothing.
Right, Scapan does it all the time. So yeah.
Why? Okay, here's a question. Try to get the name right. Yeah, Gene Wilder. He was in some interesting comedies. Why was he just the man in getting these comedies to work? The producers, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I mean, Silver Streak.
Brought it in for the producers, and that's how it all got started.
He was very well respected in New York theater, just because he was good and he was wise. And if you did what Gene said, good things would happen. And then I think that transferred to Hollywood. And that he helped Charles Grodin out a lot with his early career. And he apparently was just this Zen master of comedy and entertainment.
He was, but he could also play serious roles, and he actually kind of started out that way. He can be found on the 1966 CBS television presentation of Death of a Salesman. He plays one of the
boys
in that. Yeah, he's not one of the brothers. He's like one of the office people. And he's in that, and it's like the first time I saw that, it just blew my mind. I'm going, yes, it is, absolutely. And that was in '66 that they made that made for television version, which I showed my theater appreciation classes. I show at least part of it to them.
If he had lived to the era of the good made for cable television series and the made for streaming television series, where guys like Billy Crystal are getting these amazing dramatic parts, and all of that, they would have known exactly what to do with Gene's dramatic capabilities, or his heightened comic capabilities, like what they're doing with Henry Winkler.
Yep. Speaking of another actor who's in this, Slim Pickens is in this movie. He's so good. I mean, he was in this. He was in Dr. Strangelove. He's in The Howling. I mean,
I think there's a subtle poke at Ayn Rand in this, because in Atlas Shrugged, the main power family are the Taggarts. And their industry is trains. And who is the foreman for the train company but Mr. Taggart? Wants more beans, Mr. Taggart? That, I mean, Atlas Shrugged at the time was, I think, considered the second most influential book in the world. There was a survey that was done around that time after the Bible. And, it was still a huge bestseller, very controversial.
It is. The Fountainhead was, for many years, I don't know, it may still be, was taught in high school.
Sure. And so, Mel, bright guy in New York. Of course, he read read
Of
these things.
course, yes.
And you know,
You
I think
probably
he
saw
thought,
activists on the street because they had a clubhouse there in New York.
yeah. And so there was one of two things: either he was an admirer, you know, and this was just
I sent that. Yeah,
tip of the hat
yeah.
that you know Rand never would have appreciated,
No,
or it
she didn't
was
have a sense of humor. Yeah,
it
or
was, I know you, Ayn Rand, I
yeah,
know you. And what would drive her crazy is the thought that Blazing Saddles is a prequel to
yeah.
Atlas Shrugged.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, she didn't have much of a sense of humor. I have a feeling he was poking her in the eye.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Mel Brooks is in this movie as the governor, or the gov, if you will.
Good.
The fact,
Lepetamine, Joel, tell us about Lepetamine again.
God,
Because that's the name of the character, William J.
It's a
Lepetamine.
derivative of ptomaine, I believe. I mean, it's
No, he's named after Lepetamine, the
oh,
performer.
oh yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, the fartist.
First time I ever saw this movie, though, it struck. I associated it with ptomaine for some
Yeah.
reason. It's like,
well, I like the fact that they have these hanging gags in this movie too. There's a horse and a guy getting hung together. They have
Guess who the hangman is?
Igor, I think.
LA actor Robert Ridgely, who was best friends with Ernie Anderson, who was one of the horror hosts. Who was Svengoolie? He was the one in LA, I think. But he was also the Love Boat and Fantasy Island and Star Trek: The Next Generation. He was that voice guy for ABC.
He was the voice guy for ABC. That's right.
That's right. And then syndication.
Yep.
And the father of Paul Thomas Anderson, director. And that's why Robert Ridgely's last movie is a movie I'd love to talk about sometime with you guys. He's plays the Colonel in Boogie Nights.
Boogie Nights, that's right.
But their first producer, he plays Colonel James in Boogie Nights. Yeah, and I think it's dedicated to him. The movie's dedicated to him.
Cool. What did you guys think of the overall production of this movie? Mel Brooks does a really good job with his career here.
It looks great. The movie looks it. You know, any parody has to be an operating example of what it's setting up.
What it's setting up, absolutely.
And
so
he spares no expense.
You've got this sort of cinemascope, or this, at least it's this lurid color, like from the 50s, and in the opening sequence, and you have Frankie Lane singing the theme song, and of course he was known for Rawhide and a couple of other Western theme songs that were straight. And he sings this one straight. I mean, it's completely straight.
Frankie Lane didn't know it was a comedy.
No,
they were looking for a Frankie Lane type.
Yeah,
they put out an ad, and Frankie Lane answered and said, "Well, I know Frankie Lane, type me."
Yeah.
And so they brought him in. He got the song, and the song's written straight.
It is.
And he performed it with so much sincerity. Apparently, they were going to tell him, "Hey, look, this is satire," and he just grabbed the music and did it.
It's perfect.
And it was so good, and they just, it would have broken their hearts to have broken his heart and told him this was a joke.
Right.
And that made it so pure.
Yeah.
But there is a purity in this movie.
Yes.
There is a sincerity and a purity and a love of the Western hero and just heroism in general.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing too. They make the character of Black Bart a parody of Western heroes, but I don't ever feel they're ever taking from one specific Western with his actual.
This is not 0 Hour.
No, it's
right.
It's a popular trope.
Yeah,
and they're just using that, and they're sending it up while at the same time sort of doing an honorific of several of these character types, but mostly the heroic ones, and also the kid who is redeemed and he stops drinking and and he gets his lightning quick hands back and all that sort of thing. That's very much one of the positive tropes of but that's one of the tropes that they definitely do.
One of the joys of this movie is just when you start thinking about it, is free associating lines, and sometimes I'll just jump to the punchline. Like, in fact, I think in LA when we met, you might not have heard me. We were talking, what are we going to do? And I said, well, let's play chess. Uh, that it is so encyclopedic for that. There is a
Yeah.
prescription for whatever ails you
Mhm.
somewhere in an observation. And in a movie that is so vulgar that one of the funniest lines in the movie is, well, let's play chess.
Yeah.
As the punchline, I think it's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. Well, the vulgarity is sort of the standard SOP. It's the standard operating procedure, and that everybody's, flipping each other off with vulgar language and various things going on. And it's funny, but it's also like it becomes the fabric of the characters, in a certain way. And then you have these other things that happen, more subtle things, they become hilarious. Like you said, it's, the whole idea of, the things that, even become the wholesome stuff becomes kind of cute and a little thrilling almost when it happens.
What's the line? Is it like nowhere special? Always wanted to go there.
Yeah.
Even dramatically.
Yeah.
It's just full of beautiful lines.
Yeah. It is. It is. It's great.
And philosophically, probably every day of my life, at some point, I say, "Mongol only pawn in game of life," which I think is a Richard Pryor line.
Yeah.
And wow, how universally applicable is that?
Yes, absolutely.
That's how I'm about to feel right now. Here we go.
He's actually, Richard Pryor's name is on here as one of the writers.
Should be. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and as my understanding, Mongo is the main contribution of his that remains in the film.
He's like, forget that shit, here comes Mongo.
Yeah, that's exactly it too. He gets a great entrance. A fantastic entrance.
That right there is a wrestling entrance right there.
Totally. Well, I mean, he's a huge man. I mean, he was a huge man. He was this monstrous, strong guy.
Speaking of,
but boy, he's good in Victor Victoria also.
He's fantastic in almost everything he does.
Yeah.
Even that little television series that he did, Webster.
Yeah, he's great in Webster.
Yeah, speaking of, why didn't they have Richard Pryor in this movie? Any reason?
I think the studio thought his reputation as a wild man, it's kind of like Oliver Reed and James Bond.
Yes.
Would have overshadowed the rest of the film, which means they should have tried to get Oliver Reed as Black Bart.
Right, yeah.
Weird bit of casting that would have been.
Or White Bart,
Well, Richard Pryor would have made a fine James Bond, and I mean that.
But Pryor, yes, by this time, I think there were several reasons why he wasn't cast, and there were concerns all the way around because he also liked to party a lot at this point, and he was starting to become at least temporarily wealthy from his stand-up albums and his live appearances and various other things that he'd done, including some television. And so he hadn't reached his superstar status yet, but he was about to. It was about to break for him. And he did have an NBC television series that didn't last very long because it was so outre. It was just.
Was it called Pryor's Place?
I think it was just called the Richard Pryor Show, I think. But he had some intense social commentary stuff on there that starts out as comedic and then ends rather dark. And NBC executives were like freaking out because they were afraid he was going to start offending people, blah, 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 the typical stuff. But it was brilliant stuff. It was absolutely brilliant stuff. And I think there's probably some of that on YouTube as well. You can at least find.
Along with the Ken Berry Wow Show. Very different project.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed him and Gene Wilder and Silver Streak. They were really good.
They were a great comedy team.
Yeah.
They worked together on 3 or 4 movies.
Silver Streak was the first PG movie I ever saw.
Cool.
Yeah.
Harlem Nights with him and Eddie Murphy. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Talk about vulgarity. That movie is a stream of vulgarity. But it's fun.
Red Fox. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Red Fox.
Ella Reese. And she was I mean, you don't expect Della Reese to be, bawdy, gaudy, and obscene at times, and she is. She is totally.
And this movie is like the perfect blend of, it has physical comedy, but it has those insult comedy jokes that are in here too. The timing of everything in this movie is just perfect.
Oh yeah, I mean the cast is fantastic. I mean Harvey Korman is the centerpiece of all the scenes he's in. Really kind of conducts the timing and everything else that's going on. He's got great supporting character actors around him as well, obviously.
In a fairer world, his joke about risking an almost certain Academy Award nomination would not have been a joke.
Right.
It is, because we want to talk about how comedy gets shit on.
Yes,
And
it gets short shrift in the Oscars, absolutely.
And that Hedley Lamar is one of the most indelible, great comedic performances ever captured on film. It really is.
It's a lot of fun.
It's just perfectly pitched.
Yeah.
And he gets to do a lot in the part. There are a lot of colors he shows as that character, and I love that about it.
He does the same thing in what's the other Brooks movie that he's in with Cloris Leachman as the nurse?
High Anxiety.
High Anxiety. He has a lot of fun in that one too, and so does she. She's amazing in that.
She's really good. She's really good.
Yeah. What's some of you guys' favorite scenes in this movie?
Oh, well, I mean, honestly, the scene in the jail where he and the Waco kid just get to talk and get to know each other. I love that scene.
Yeah, that's a really cool scene. I really enjoy the tone setting that happens when he hoodwinks. He and the railroad workers hoodwink the bad guys, the foreman, into singing "Camptown Ladies" and
Camptown Ladies.
and the overseer comes on and goes, "What in the wide world of sport is going on here?" That's hilarious, and it's a great tone setter. It's
I didn't know Kansas City had that reputation.
Right. Yeah, seriously, that was great, and the jail scene is that's a really just great acting scene, I think, because it builds a connection between the two actors as the characters, and it's clear that they, the characters build a sort of a more than a passing respect for each other almost immediately. It's like, I'm in this town, the color of my skin makes me an outcast. You're here in the jail. You had a different life once upon a time. Now you've got this, and then playing.
Well, there's another bit of coding with Waco Kid, and that's that. I think partly because of Gene Wilder's appearance, partly because of a little bit of his accent, partly because of just his articulateness. He's Jewish.
Yes,
This is, and maybe that's just me reading into it, but I don't think so. He is a Jewish character.
I think
he never has to bring it up, but that they are these two outsiders in this other world.
Yes, absolutely.
And that hiring a Gig Young or somebody like that, a goyish actor, would not have communicated that. I think it's another good reason that he ended up casting Wilder in the part.
Yeah.
Because then it's clearly an avatar for Mel Brooks.
Yes, it is. And by that time they'd worked together, and they were about to work, I think, or they may have been working together. I can't remember the
Young
time
Frankenstein.
of Young Frankenstein.
Young Frankenstein was concurrent with this, and
around the same time.
And Wilder helped write it.
Yeah. And so he and Brooks were simpatico. I mean, there's no doubt about that, and probably had been since the producers.
I'm hysterical and I'm wet.
Yeah.
Favorite
wearing a
Mel
cardboard belt.
favorite Mel Brooks movie?
Oh my God, what are you gonna
Probably
do?
this.
Probably this.
Probably
Yeah,
this and
I
the
mean,
producers.
there's so many close seconds and thirds. I mean, you've got Young Frankenstein, you've got the producers, you've
My
got A
anxiety.
History of the World Part Two, you've got all of the stuff that has great, great writing in it.
Yeah.
Fantastic writing. You also, I mean, I have one of the 2,000-Year-Old Man albums in my collection.
Oh,
So, because the early 60s was a fascinating time for comedians and stand-ups and routines and stuff. Mort Saul was doing his thing. And yeah,
if you can find it, and it's probably on YouTube. Which I know is bait for Jewel immediately
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
start looking things up. But if you can find it on YouTube, I think in 84 or 85, Mel Brooks did a live sort of concert special, almost cabaret show for
Mhm.
HBO. That's really good, and I think he does 2,000-Year-Old Man in that,
2,000-Year-Old Man again.
but he sings. Mel
Yeah.
has a great voice.
Mhm.
He's really good. He sings, and I think wrote a little song in a documentary about the Automat recently,
Yeah.
and he's still got it.
Yeah.
He still has it, and it's obvious why Anne Bancroft, such a classy lady, was crazy about him.
Well, yeah, he's just funny. He made her laugh, for God's sakes, among
He's
other things.
charming,
He was also incredibly intelligent, and she
incredibly
was
smart.
too.
Yeah, and there's a Brooks line that I mention in the daybook occasionally when I have a real ripe one, and it is one of the great American Zen statements, and the most Zen statement in comedy I've ever heard, which is the point of it all is to rise beneath vulgarity, which says so much.
It
It
does.
really does.
It's also one of those double-edged statements that allows you the freedom to do whatever the hell you want,
Yeah,
creatively.
because you understand the treasure being handed to you
Yeah,
by the universe to be
yeah,
able to do that.
yeah.
Mm. Let's
Yeah,
see.
there's an HBO Mel Brooks concert
Oh,
special.
Yep.
eight,
So
okay.
Brooks is now 98 years old, and as far as I know, he's still working on projects.
He is.
I know.
He is. Well, his son is brilliant. I mean, thanks to I think his son's my age.
Mm.
We got World War Z.
Ah,
That's Max Brooks. That's his son,
cool.
and some fantastic GI Joe comics. He specialized in writing about GI Joe.
That's so cool. I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Cool.
really good. I mean, he really digs into the mythology and invents a
Mhm.
lot of the mythology
Sure.
and so on.
But that's what you're supposed to do with something that started out as a toy. You're supposed to use your imagination and invent stories.
It's
Yeah.
exactly what he did.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you saw the Beast Wars Transformers movie. There's a crossover coming between Transformers and GI Joe. So
That would be all right.
I hope they get Max to write it.
Yeah, that would be
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Sell a lot of toys too. They do it right.
The great thing, I tell you, good Max Brooks crossover and all of this is if you ever get or listen to the audio book of World War Z. Do you know about this? Have you read World War Z?
I have not.
It's
No.
fantastic. It is all interviews. The entire book is just interviews that Max is allegedly doing. And on the audiobook, Max plays himself.
Mm-hmm.
And the interviews are great because they go literally all over the map.
Right.
Every social class you can think of, Israeli secret agents. I mean, the whole nine yards. And the cast. So Mel doesn't appear in it, but Carl Reiner does as a retired Israeli secret
Sure.
agent. And you've got Alan Alda.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Rob Reiner. You have John Turturro.
How about
Just
Armin?
amazing. And Mark Hamill is fantastic in it.
Well, yes,
Just
anyway.
this unbelievable cast. And it's full of a lot of Brooks regulars and people within that Brooks universe.
Mm-hmm.
Rob and Carl and, the whole nine yards. And it's wonderful. It's serious, but I'm going to go out on a limb and be more pretentious than I usually am. All of Mel's movies are serious on a certain level.
Yes, they are. They all have serious social commentary.
Mhm.
All of
and serious dramatic stakes.
them.
I think that's one of the things that really makes them work.
Yeah, it's what makes him entertaining too. He's so good at getting everything he wants out, not just out of his actors, but out of the sets he has, the locations, everything.
It's one of the key differences between satire and just your average buffoonery,
Yeah.
which is fun too, but it doesn't have it does bless you. It doesn't have bless you again. Do it 3 times and you have to be exercised. Okay.
I'm waiting. Young priest, old priest showing up at my door.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything you guys want to add about the movie?
Other than it's a 11 on a scale of 10.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, numbers cease to matter.
Yeah, no.
This is
a classic.
skyward and it's still going up, basically.
Septillion, yeah.
Yeah.
It would take the Willow chip.
Yeah,
5 minutes though to figure out why it works.
Right.
It's a movie you should own. I mean,
This is rated so high that it's one of the variables in figuring out warp speed. So
it is. Yeah.
Before we go, we're going to hold a moment of silence for the late David Lynch, very famous director. So please join us in holding a moment of silence for the late David Lynch. Thank you guys for holding the moment of silence with me. This was a fun movie to review.
absolutely.
Jewel, I'm assuming you have a thing tomorrow night. You have something scheduled tomorrow night, right?
No, I don't have nothing scheduled tomorrow night.
Do you want to maybe get in touch with Barry?
Who?
McClain.
Oh yeah.
See if he wants to talk about David Lynch.
Yeah. Let me see if he's available for tomorrow night.
Worth an ask, because I was going to do it on my own, and I just think it'd be better, to keep in the family.
Yeah, for sure. I'll contact him tonight and see if he's available for any. If he's not available for tomorrow, if he's available for
see when he
time
is.
soon. Yeah.
Because he's such a huge fan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Again, links to Patrick McCray's Dark Shadows Day book about is going to be in the description box. Link to Alan Gallant's YouTube channel, Collins Port After Dark, will be in the description box. Guys, have a good night and stay safe.
Take care.